Well, hello, 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 and welcome everyone to the Black America Weigh-In segment of the Collaborative UTV. And I am super excited. These are my peeps, y'all. Oh my gosh, ever since our first conversation, I was like, you know what? I like hanging with them. Maybe we could do this like, every now and then, or every once a month, once a quarter. I don't care. I just love talking to these people. So I want to welcome back to the broadcast Philip Dunn, Erica Mann, and Trent T. Danielle. Woo! All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, we're the Collaborative UTV where we educate, inspire, and empower you to be your best you. And so we are weighing in today on a heavily discussed topic. And if it's not discussed in your house and you look like me, then you might want to tune in for sure so that you can get educated on this topic, the wealth gap. And we're talking the wealth gap between Black America and white America. But I mean, honestly, it looks like the wealth gap with Black America is now, we've fallen and we've trended to the bottom of everybody now. Like we're even coming in below the Hispanic population. So that if that doesn't cause you any kind of worry or any kind of concern, then I'm gonna ask you to wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. All right. So Erica, you mentioned in our pre-show briefing that you had some stats. I'm gonna lean on you for that. Go ahead. Give us some interesting stats about this particular topic.
Sure. If you look at, and I'm going to start with Black men. If you look at Black men's earnings compared with their non-white counterparts, same position, same qualifications, the Black man will earn only 98 cents to the white man's dollar. And even for Asian men, it's $1.02. Now, if that black
Wow.
man does not have a college degree, that 98 cents actually drops to 68 cents. That
Wow.
when you add that up over 5 years or a decade, that's a tremendous loss for black men, especially if they're head of their households. They're losing out on so much money, promotion, opportunity, and also this does something to their morale. So it's very disheartening to see those stats, knowing that so many black men in our community want to be employed, they want opportunities, and they want a chance to leverage their own intellectual prowess.
Wow, Erica, you know what? And that was a perfect stat to start off with because we have two of America's black men right here on the panel with us. I mean, and they're absolutely at two different ends of the spectrum. So we're going to get some great feedback, guys. Age over beauty, however you want to choose. Which one wants to go first?
I'll let Philip go first.
Oh, I appreciate that, Chris. This is a very important topic, right? Because, many of us, black men, black women, we get up, we put our pants on, we go to work just like everybody else, but we're paid significantly less than our brothers and sisters from the white community. And we have to stop and ask the question, why is that? And when you think about, systemic racism, white supremacy, which is being tossed around these days, a lot of that is sort of built into corporate American processes, whether it's the hiring process, the compensation process, and we need to start finding ways to root those out. And I think once we get towards the end of the show, we could talk a little bit more about some of the solutions that we have to address some of that. But once we start to ask that question, why, and we start to, draw more awareness to the reasons why, then we can start to chip away at this problem and then try to bring some equality to the wage or to the salary gap.
Absolutely. Trent?
I think that I think we have somewhat of a twofold dynamic, okay? And a lot of it comes down to self-responsibility. I mean, let's just be honest, guys. America is what it is, all right? I mean, the bottom line, the financial infrastructure on this country was made off of the backs of people of color who were enslaved, and not just black people. It was Hispanic, it was Latina, Asian. So that's just the infrastructure of this country. And I think what happens a lot of time is that what gets frustrating for me is that there's just so much talk about we should, we ought to, why can't we, why don't we? And there's no do, and there's no action behind it. Let's just call a spade, guys. Literally speaking, if every black person who is working a job today walked off of that job for the next 6 months, everything in this country would change just like that. It's not even a question, because these countries and these corporations of this country would lose so much, because they would recognize that you cannot build and staff a business off of all Anglo-Saxon white people. You just can't do it, okay? Now, on top of that, I think that our institutions that we typically relied upon, especially in the civil rights area, specifically the church, well, there's so much distance now between that institution and the boots on the ground, the people. The church has kind of become once removed from that. So at the end of the day, what I always try to do is shift the narrative when these kind of conversations happen, or at least broaden the narrative to, okay, guys, the four of us can talk ad nauseum about what's wrong, okay? But what risk am I willing to take to change things? It's just like people in the church, what I call comfort Christianity. It's, well, I stand for the Lord, but, don't ask me to move into a neighborhood where, so at the end of the day, self-responsibility is going to be the most important thing in a discussion like that. I know that as talented as I am, with the pedigree that I have, if I went into corporate America today, they're going to try to pay me less. So guess what? I've created my own worth, okay, where I can now dictate how much other people of color that work for me can make. And at the end of the day, that's really the only way to win the game is you actually have to play the game. And I think there's way too much talk going on, and nobody has suited up and gotten on the field.
Whoa. Okay, he came out
You
with the
asked me.
gloves off, didn't he? Okay. But I just want to weigh in on that because I'm looking at what's happening now, especially with the athletes who've walked off the court, who have done certain things. And one of the questions that I had, and I know it may not be a popular question, but if this wasn't a COVID season where everybody wouldn't, you didn't have any fans anyway, and there really wasn't a lot to be lost, would they still take that stand? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and so the reality is, true that there definitely needs to be a more um, concentrated effort, a more unified effort to do things. I mean, I certainly agree. But Erica, when he was talking, I was looking at your face and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what she's thinking, but I
I
certainly
was
want to
being an
hear it.
active listener. I was being an active listener. Trent always has some gems. So one of the things that
Yes.
Trent said, that was really important is you got to suit up and you got to get in the game, right?
Yep.
Okay. How do we get in the game when we're undercapitalized? That's what we really have to negotiate, because there are parts of our community who they have the talent, they have the moxie, they have the know-how to create dynamic businesses, but they're constantly being undercapitalized because a lot of venture capitalists will fund a inexperienced non-Black candidate with just an idea versus a Black candidate who has a tremendous amount of experience and has a team and is ready to go. So yeah, I believe that we should suit up and be in the game, but I'm also going to need a stack of cash and some coins to get in the game and play properly. And that's what we're discussing, because Black businesses and Black people have been marginalized and undercapitalized in playing the corporate game.
And that's 100% true too, in what Erica's saying, and to try to tie together or marry together what Trent was talking about, what Erica's talking about. There is some personal accountability we have to take as a community, and we have to start to try to find ways to minimize, the lack of capital or having access to capital when we do want to go and start our own businesses. We have to rely more on our community and really begin to train up our community to support our businesses and our ventures that we'd like to start. And then for those folks that still want to stay in corporate America, you have to take the initiative to go out and negotiate your salary or negotiate your wage. So there's a lot of money that's left on the table. Part of the excuse for the wage gap is that, many folks get that first offer, and particularly Black women, and they don't negotiate. And I've seen this before, at the hiring process, where folks will leave money on the table just because they're happy to get that job. Yeah. I'm telling you, Black people, if you're listening today, there's an extra, 5 to 10%, waiting for you if you're willing to demonstrate the value that you bring to the organization. So don't underestimate that additional monies that are out there for you if you're still in corporate America.
And I'm gonna really chime in on what you just said, because I was probably in the workplace 15 years before I knew that you could negotiate your salary.
Well,
and that's the truth. And I'm going to say this, there's not enough information in the process. It wasn't until, I kid you not, it wasn't until one of my white counterparts was up for a promotion. And we were talking and she was like, girl, they offered me this. And I was like, So I counter offered. I said, counter, what does that mean? And she was like, yeah. And she was like, oh, you didn't know? You don't have to accept. I said, what? Like, no one told me that. And so part of it is the lack of knowledge. Like, if you don't know, you don't know. There are certain fundamental things that as a Black culture that are being taught in the white culture right at the house that we're not getting because we don't know. And so I just wanted to chime in and say I was a victim of that for sure. Trent, I think
you can see me about to explode over here. Okay? You see I'm about to lose it. Okay. And here's why, guys. Why haven't we ever heard the guy that became a drug dealer and turned into a drug kingpin? Why did he never say, I couldn't get financing and capital? Okay. Think about that. Now, that's a business enterprise. And you never hear the drug dealer say, oh man, I had a hard time getting my business started. Because here's the deal, what it takes to get into that game is pure want to and hustle. That's all there is. They are typically people that decide to go into the drug business, are typically underprivileged, they're poor, and they want out of that structure so bad that they're willing to they're willing to never accept no for an answer. They go again. Now, they do it through a means that ultimately is self-destructive to themselves and the community. I'm not downplaying that. But at the end of the day, guys, the conversation about we don't have capital again has to come back to self-responsibility. Let's just call a spade a spade. You're not going to walk into the bank and ever get the amount of money that you need. You get the amount of money that they're willing to give you or that your credit deserves or whatever. But at the end of the day, banks are not in the business to give you what you need. Banks are in the business to keep you on that drip of needing to come back to them, so they give you just enough to capitalize a little bit, then you got to come back to them for more and more and more. That's just how the banking system works. So the deal is this, guys. At some point in time, we have to just stop saying there's not enough information out there. There is information out there. The problem is people aren't motivated to ask the questions, okay? Listen, I can't work in corporate America because I know my worth. I know I'm too valuable to go in and accept anybody's paycheck. So I don't even think about it. But I think that the more and more we say things like, well, people have great ideas, but it's undercapitalized. Listen, all of my big investors in my business right now are white. Okay. Some of them are actually bigots. Okay. And I know that just by the way they talk, just the thing they do, but they understand one color, and that's the color green. Okay. Now, the reason these people are willing to invest and to fund into projects that I create is because I know my value and I show my value. Okay. So, and Philip is spot on. Now, if you choose to go into the corporate arena, that's fine. But walk in there knowing your value, and at the same time, be ready to go uncomfortable until you can achieve what you want. Be ready to turn down that first offer. Be ready to turn down that second offer. Be ready to have the offer pulled from you completely because you knew your value. Because once you get in a position where you know your value and you're being compensated for that value, you're never going to look back, and then you aspire to do what the four of us are doing. We want to educate people. But guess what? People can look at myself, they can look at Phil, they can look at you guys and say, you know what? I want what they're at. So let me ask some questions. Let me ask the questions and stop complaining about the fact that there's no information out there, because it is out there. That's just bottom line. If one can do it, all can do it. It's just a matter of how badly do you want it, and do you understand that asking questions is literally the cobblestone path to get there.
Okay, so I have to say this because I've known Trent for a while, and I've seen business venture after business venture, and the one thing that I can say, it don't matter what happened, he don't stop. And it doesn't matter if the rug is snatched from up under him, he gonna find another rug. It's just very simple. And so I get what you're saying, and I truly understand that perspective. And I think the real issue is everybody doesn't have that same perspective. And so, what do we do? Do we just leave the ones without the perspective on their own and save the ones who want to be saved? Like, what's the thought behind that?
No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to let some people drown. Absolutely,
No.
yes.
I started
You can't save everybody.
You're right. You cannot save everybody, but there are some of us who just need that push. They just need that access so that they can unlock their greatness. We cannot leave those people behind.
So then I'm going to throw this question out there. And Philip, I know you're ready, so I'm gonna just throw this out there. What about the Black folk that have made it? The ones with the millions that are just happy to be in the Forbes magazine, but they're not really providing fun, because if you know as a community that your community is not getting funding from other communities, then why not reach back and help your community? I mean, what's up with that?
Well, I mean, I think some of them do. Oprah's done it. Robert F. Smith has done it. Tyler Perry has done it. Bob Johnson has done it to an extent. And then there are those who have done it, you know, kind of silently. Magic Johnson has given back. But then I think more importantly, more than just giving us money, we need the blueprint.
That's what I was about to say. I'm not even talking about the money. I'm talking about the access. I'm talking about the opportunity. I know Tyler Perry is perfect and a perfect example of creating that space in his industry. But what about everybody else who's not doing that? And that's the question.
They like to eat.
I'm looking right here. We're giving everybody the blueprint in some fashion. And so Trent talked about, or you talked about Trent, you know, opportunity after opportunity. He's working through these different business ventures. He's got this mindset, whether they're selling lemonade, dolls, or whatever, you know, he's got this mindset that can make businesses work. But then there's also another component to that. Black people need to be patient with their business ventures. If we don't from a business idea, we throw our hands up and we think that that's it. There are some people who have been grinding for 10 years who became a millionaire after 10 years, who didn't make any money for 10 years. So we need to change our mindset from that every 2-week paycheck mindset to, if I build it, then, you know, I can have, you know, immense wealth for myself and my family in my community. So change the mindset, look for the small pieces of the blueprint. We won't get it all at once, but really focus in on some of these smaller conversations that are happening as opposed to looking for the big chunk.
And be willing to fail. I mean, I have failed 1,000 times more than I've succeeded. I mean, most of my business ventures have been failures from the standpoint of the yardstick that I measure it by, which is deposit slips. Okay, I've had many. I mean, that's the only way I measure success in business is deposit slips. Okay, but at the end of the day, all of those failures, while they did not succeed in achieving the primary goal, which was to achieve more and more deposit slips, I did get an education that's invaluable. I mean, I literally have a Harvard Ivy League education, and I never spent one day at Harvard. Okay.
Come on.
What I understand is that I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to fail. There is no middle ground. Okay. And then when they're writing the story about my life, whenever that would happen, it's either going to be is that he achieved X, Y, Z, or he didn't. And so we're going to make up some other stuff to say at a funeral because it sounds good. Okay. So, so at the end of the day, the reality is that Philip is spot on. You have to be patient. There is no fast money in good business. It just isn't. And it took me a long time to get to the point where I truly am able to recognize the quote unquote comforts of the lifestyle. Now, one of the things I did, and this is probably not part of the blueprint that most people do unless they're really willing to jump out there, is listen, I faked it until I made it. Okay. I literally moved into neighborhoods that I could not afford to live in. I drove vehicles that I could not afford to drive. I had to hustle my ass off in order to maintain those things. And a lot of it took away the enjoyment of having those things, but I was always surrounded by an energy and people who were upwardly mobile and progressive thinkers. I didn't live in the big house and nice cars because of just the big house and nice cars. It was because the people I was around, the relationships that I'd make with people at the clubhouse or the golf course or at the poker club or the bowling alley was different than if I spent all my time hanging around with my folks in the hood. Okay. And listen, I'm true to the hood. I love it. But at the end of the day, guys, I wanted more. So what I understood is that I had to kind of change the contacts that were in my cell phone. I had to eliminate some of those friendships and those relationships with women that kept me in the same place. And once I started to do that, then I started to get some enemies. Philip has seen some of the, I guess you call some of the angst that I've gotten online with some of my political philosophies and things like that. But guess what? Those are a part of the blueprint that I've walked in order to be in a position to really do what my ultimate goal in life is that take care of my girls, take care of my daughters, take care of my spouse. If I'm able to do that and provide a financial legacy for them, where these kind of conversations really aren't relevant to them because they don't need to depend on a paycheck. Their future is not at the whim of a boss who has a bad day or who has a identity crisis or is a racist, pure and simple. So I think at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is you have to just embrace and fall in love with absolute miserable, depressing, embarrassing failure. Because if you learn to do that, they won't sidetrack you as they do so many people who want to achieve it quick and always look like the smartest guy in the room.
Woo!
So I have to
I
interject.
was about to say, Erica, I was
Yeah.
looking at you. I was like, "Ooh, she about to come in." But but
I have to interject.
before you start, I want to preface it by this. You know, you're an educator, right? So you literally have a different heart in the matter. And so I can see how everything, like it was like a chalkboard. I was just looking at your face, but
You know what?
so
By
yes, go
trade,
ahead, please. Go ahead.
by trade, I'm an accountant. So I count
Okay.
money. I started off in banking. I was in corporate for 15 years. I've been in government for 10 years. I've worked in the United States in corporate. I've worked in the United Kingdom in corporate. I like money. I know money, but I also know people. And right, in my heart, I am a volunteer. I do go back and educate people if they want to listen. So I think that Trent has some really good points, but I'm going to tell you, there are people, there are people who need that check because they have to feed their kids and they don't have the moxie that you have. You talked, our last talk, you talked about how your dad inspired you, right? To be the man that you are. I had the same type of dad. My dad told me, you got to work hard, elbow grease, you got to be the best, you got to be 10 times better. Some people don't have that, but they still have greatness within them and they like to eat. So they need their check. And so then we come over to Philip, where he's telling people, you have to change your mindset. So we have to start telling young people very early on, do what you love and stick with it. Do what you're good at and stick with it. Do what you're good at. And if nobody stands up and clap for you, clap for yourself and keep going. And so that's when you talk about access to information, we need to give people access to the type of information where they have self-confidence, where they can build their moxie, where they can build endurance and they can strive for better. Because I agree with you, Trent, being poor and not having what you want is so very uncomfortable, sir. It is very uncomfortable. And you have to be able to show people that, hey, if you're willing to say, I don't want to be uncomfortable anymore, here are the tools so that you can be comfortable, so you can feed your family, so you can go on a nice vacation, so you can buy your kids books, so your kid can have a computer. Because we're so far behind as a bottom cast. The everyday things that maybe me, Trent, and Philip take advantage of, they don't have. Their kids don't have computers, but they're sitting there waiting for online learning. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I agree. There is a lot of personal responsibility that we have to take, but some people, they don't even know what that responsibility is. And we have to lift as we climb. I know Trent will go leave somebody at the bottom, but being done might lift you up.
Okay, but Erica, let me ask you this question, Erica. Okay,
Yes.
and listen, I'm not saying that I don't agree fundamentally. Okay, but at the end of the day, you know, there's only 60 minutes in a football game. Okay, the only thing that determines whether you are a champion or not is what you do in those 60 minutes. Practice and all that stuff that plays a part. But if the Atlanta Falcons are a prime example of that, with that issue that they had on Sunday, go Cowboys. But anyway, here's the question I have for you, okay? In our community, it seems like that a lot of times the conversation is about, you know, how we're behind the power curve. So do you think that it's a situation where people in our community don't understand that white folks struggle just as much as we do? Okay. It's just not mainstream. They struggle. Listen, I'm telling you that white people that I'm doing business with, that I'm partners with,
You see my hand on my head?
one of them, in fact, one of my biggest investors, this guy's white guy. He grew up poor. His dad was abusive. He abused his mom, everything. He had nothing. He was literally in poverty until he went into the military. Now, he started off at the exact same place that other people from that same community start off, okay? But there was something fundamental, and it was not people ring knocking, because see, the more important ism in this world that people seem to forget, it's classism as opposed to racism, okay? If you at least seem like you know the game, it makes it a lot easier to play because people want to associate with people that they think are in their class. Now, one of the things that I found, and Philip, maybe you can help me out with this as a black male. Listen, I really don't encounter too many white men saying that they don't like me because I'm black, or they don't want to give me an opportunity because I'm black, or Obama was a bad president. They don't. That's not the conversation I'm having with my white counterparts. The conversation I'm having with them is, how can we do this and make this happen?
I
So
think you're being lucky. I think you're lucky. And you asked me the question. I think that your friend who struggled and had a bad home life, he had one thing that is the absolute currency of America, and that's whiteness.
that's crazy.
No,
That's
Yeah,
not
I know.
true. That's not true.
Let's go back to what we were talking about, the wealth gap. The average white family has almost $800,000 more in asset and value than a black family.
Okay, that's fine. But okay, at
They
the end
don't
of the
have
day,
an
what
advantage.
what does that mean? Oh, great. That's a wonderful statistic, and I will 100% agree with you that it's true. Now, how does that translate to Philip W. Dunn, who is a father, who is a husband, who wants more for his children, he wants more for his family? Does that statistic really even matter? Okay, because what I know of
Yeah.
Philip is,
yeah.
guess what? Philip is where he is because he wanted it and he went for it. It doesn't matter what the gap is. It does now. Did he have to overcome some things, especially in corporate America? Yes, he did. But okay, Philip, go ahead, man.
Okay, so here it is. Yesterday, find out that the CEO of Wells Fargo, CEO Charles Sharp or whatever his name is, he says the reason that they have a problem with diversity and inclusion, in particular for black candidates, is that they can't find them. They can't seem to find black candidates. Now we got 107. Let's all look around. We got 107 HBCUs, Purdue A&M, verified institution that I know many businesses can go to and find some tremendous talent. But it speaks to the invisibility that black people still face. They don't see us unless we're a threat in some other way. So that's one constraint that we're working against. Your good buddy, your friend, your pal, who experienced the tough times growing up. We all experienced tough times growing up, but I guarantee you, he didn't have that headwind facing him of blackness, which basically has a system that's built in place in almost every American institution that is designed to really impede our progress and growth. So when you said, "Hey, Philip W. Dunn, worked his tail off," man, I got 5 or 6 certifications, 2 or 3 advanced degrees, all just to get the exact same thing as my peer who had just a bachelor's degree, who's a white,
Right? Yeah.
who had a history degree, by the way. So, I mean, it's one of those situations where if you take a look at it on a case-by-case basis, in almost every case, you're going to see that we had the disadvantage just because of the structural situation that we have in the United States.
Okay. Oh, I got in. Whew. Okay. First of all, this is an amazing conversation. And for those of you listening, I hope you're sharing this because so many of us need to hear these points of views because the points of views are valid. I love that that Erica has her point of view. I love Trent's point of view and Philip because really it represents the points of view that we as Black America have. If there's a group and they're having a conversation about this, I guarantee you they'll fit into one of these 3 spaces. But the one thing that I really want to key in on, because Trent, I tend to now, before I had more of Erica's view, but now I do have more of your view only because of what I'm experiencing. The truth of the matter is nothing, if we want things to change, right? It's very hard for you to come to my house and change what's happening at my house. It's
Absolutely.
my house. And so my rules go for my house. If you want something different, go to your house. And I think that's what Trent is basically saying. If we as Black people want something different, it's time out for asking someone to let us come into their house and them do something different. There are 2 things. Philip, you said it. or I don't remember who said it. Either we're gonna walk away from these places and let them see the true value of who we are. Because once we walk away, you gonna have some problems. And when I say walk away, I mean stop spending your money at Gucci, stop spending your money at like walk away from the system. Period. Or you're going to create your own system. But if you're not going to do one of those things, then you just going to have to get in where you fit in. And that is, I believe, what Trent is saying. Like we have to have a different mindset and not feel that we are victims anymore. Because the truth of the matter is, when Asians come over here, when
Absolutely.
Hispanics come over here, they were treated the exact same way. And no,
Yes.
it's the truth. And the truth of the matter is that they decided we're going to stay in one house. We're
Right.
going to all work together. We're going to put our money together and we're going to start one business. When little Hector get his business started, Hector going to move out, but the rest of us, we going to stay here. Hector going to contribute back to the family. They
Absolutely.
came together and they had a system. They weren't worried about what wasn't offered to them. What they were worried about is what their goal was. And so I just want to throw that out there. I just said, because that's
I have a
something that
question.
I'm learning.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the reparations that were given to those in the internment camp, did that not help them? Because that helped them, right?
Honestly, you know what? No. Honest answer is no. And here's why. Okay.
Okay, tell me why.
The collective mindset is the problem. Okay. This is why people who are dead broke and they win the lottery, they're worse off after they win the lottery. Okay. Yep. Because there's a collective mindset, and Thea is absolutely right. It is a collectivism of thought around the future, not the now. Even in our and I get in trouble a lot of time because I'm hard on the Black church, and I'm hard on the Black church for a reason, because the Black church used to be the bastion of hope for our community. Right. Okay. Because everything in the Black community, in the Black church in the 60s and the civil rights was about the future generations. Okay. Right. But what's happened is that we lifted people like Creflo Dollar and, these people up and now it's this what do they call it? Prosperity gospel that's being preached. And anytime you start to connect money with emotion, everything gets off track. Absolutely everything. So the point is, it's not a matter that you let people drown, but literally speaking, at some point in time, you have to ultimately hold people responsible for themselves. I want to help the poor people, but what I learned a long time ago, the best way to help poor people is not to be poor. Okay, that's just the bottom line. And at the end of the day, Thea is absolutely right. Asians, Hispanics, all of us people of color were victims of white supremacy in this country. We just happen to be the only ones that literally cannot get off of that focus. We watched George Floyd have his life snuffed out.
You said cannot get off of the focus. The entire system of America is built on anti-Blackness, and we're Black.
Okay, no, the entire system of America is built on capitalism. Okay, that's just about, because if it were built on anti-Black, there's no way a Trent Daniel could exist. There's no way a Philip Dunn could exist. There's no way a Barack Obama could exist. The racism is a part of people's political and emotional leanings. It's about bad education. You're not born racist, okay? But you can be born poor, okay? You can be born wealthy. So at the end of the day, I understand what you're saying, Erica, but I just believe the more we talk about how unfair it is and how bad it is and how the man wants to hold us down, the more we talk about that, the less time we can spend on talking about, okay, Philip, I'll tell you what, you developed this initiative. That's your talent. I'm going to go get the money. That's my talent. Erica, you create the educational structure in the system. And Thea, you create the marketing design. See, this is exactly how Southwest Airlines was created right here. People sitting around with a collective mindset and actually doing something to make it happen. And no one at that table said, well, I'm an Irish immigrant, so I can't get any money, or I'm limited in education. It's people who just had a collective mindset that were focused on winning. Period.
Wow.
And I understand what you're saying, Thea and Trent. I got to side with Erica on this because we sat through the reparations classes. We've studied this. We understand that there is an outstanding receivable due to Black America. No ifs, ands, buts about it. And we won't have anybody write that off. Now, what we do need to focus on more is the action that it's going to take to pursue our own means of wealth so that we can better and more effectively go after that which we're owed. But, a couple of solutions before we get out of here is you guys have laid it out. We have got to either go cold turkey and walk away from the system, or we've got to slowly and gradually do what we're doing to the table and make sure that folks are starting to slowly put their money into Black-owned businesses until such time we can strengthen ourselves and become more self-reliant. Then we can better compete with corporate America. And then if you're in corporate America, do one of these two things. Walk around your office, take a look at your directory, see how many people are Black within your department. See how many people they're hiring within your department. Take note of that. And then start asking the tough questions of the people in the right places and put them to the fire, hold them to the fire, hold them accountable for making those changes. We make those changes inside corporate America and outside corporate America. We can balance out the wealth and the income gap in a very short amount of time.
And then be bold. Create an affinity group at work. Start asking, where's the affinity group? Where are the mentors? Like, you have to, if you're in corporate America, you have to take bold steps. While I was at Bank of New York Mellon, I created an affinity group for Black and brown people that were working at BNY right here in Houston, because we didn't know about the promotions. We didn't know the inside track. So we had to be bold and say, we want to create an inside track. We want accountability. So I think if you're in corporate America, you get to be inside and change from within so that you can bring people from the outside in, so that Charles Schwartz won't make any more comments about that there's a very little Black talent to pull from.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Last thing, corporate America needs to know Black America is waking up. And all we have to do is start removing our dollar slowly over time. Those shareholders that depend on those dividends to keep them wealthy, those dividends will start to shrink over time.
Money talks.
If it shrinks too much, it's going to be too late, because we will have empowered ourselves enough to where we can effectively compete and outperform those in corporate America. So corporate America, take notice, because we're waking up and we're waking other Black people up, and we're going to take that $1.3 trillion that we use to pay your dividends every year, and we're going to put it right back in our pockets.
And I think there's one last, I'm sorry, Thea, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, okay. Trent, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Just one last point that I think is really important is Black people better start to understand the value of politics, okay? Because this whole, I vote blue, or I vote this because that's what my grandmama and them voted and things. Let me tell you something, guys. All politics is corrupt. All. Democratic, Republican, it doesn't matter. Nancy Pelosi makes the same money that Mitch McConnell makes, okay? They all are in the same club. They all work on the same team. But what happens is that we lose the sensibility of what voting really means. Voting doesn't mean, well, this is what makes me feel good. Voting means understanding the value and the benefit. I'll give you a prime example. I'm about to throw all of my support behind the Republican candidate for district attorney in Harris County, okay? I've never voted for a Republican district attorney ever, but here's why I'm doing it. Because my business depends on the mindset of this district attorney when it comes to gambling in the state of Texas. This district attorney is pro-business. Now, here's the deal. This district attorney is really not for a lot of things that Kim Ogg, our current district attorney, is, that helps Black people, okay? Getting these bails, these ridiculous bail when people get arrested and they get put in jail, getting arrested for small marijuana offenses. Kim Ogg has some policies that have been very helpful to minorities, but at the end of the day, I'm a businessman. I have to vote where my dollar makes sense, because if one of my daughters should get in trouble, guess what? I have to have the money to help them fight in this system. So I think Black people really need to get off, and I'm not pro one or pro other. What I'm saying is this whole, well, I vote straight ticket this because this, it just, I'm sorry, I'm about to lose this.
No, and basically what you're saying is what Philip said, and it's what I said in the very beginning. We need to wake up on every front. Wake up and smell the coffee. Figure out what it is. Number one, figure out what you want. Like, do you want to stay in the situation you're in, or do you want it to change? And if you want it to change, then get educated, find the resources, because Google is your friend. Find the resources that you need so that you can begin to educate yourself. And I'm absolutely, I agree with everybody on the ask the right questions. Stop asking dumb questions and
Yeah.
ask the right questions. And then the
Mhm.
last point is, you know what? Stop being a victim, because yes, the situation, it is what it is. That's my term. It is what it is. But what will you need to do to make it change? And that's the better question. What do we do to make it change? Okay, guys. Woo! We made it. I appreciate you guys. Now, you know we coming back, right? Because this conversation is a continual conversation.
Yeah.
My panel, I mean, I love my Black America Weigh-In panel. Thank y'all so much for joining me this week. I'm going to throw out that schedule for next month. If y'all can make it, let's come on back and let's talk, because I believe the more we have these conversations, the more we're making the noise that will wake people up, that will bring people to the table to have these conversations themselves. All right, guys. So this was this episode of the Collaborative You. Thank you so much. Remember, we're here to educate, inspire, and empower you to be your best you. And we're out. Peace.
Yeah.